Welcome to the Coffee with Closer show, where we interview real investors that are doing real deals in this current market about how they are finding, funding, and flipping the deals. We talk about what they are doing that is working and the things they did that didn't work so that you can save time and money as you become a real investor. Welcome to the Coffee with Closer show. Hey everyone, it's Zack, Childress, and I'm back with another Coffee with Closer show today because where we bring real investors, real deals, and real market understanding to this call to really talk to people about what's going on. But today is different because I'm bringing a real funder to the table with you. So listen, do me a favor, click that subscribe button, smash that bell so that you can get notified every time we throw out another Coffee with Closer shows. And I want to introduce you to Mr. Lee Arnold. How are you, Lee?
I'm doing great, Zach. Thanks for having me, buddy.
No problem, man. So listen, this show, we get all kinds of people. We get new people, we get seasoned people, we get tire kickers, we get them all. But I want people to really understand, like, I know most people are used to coming on these shows to really hear somebody talk about a specific deal they went through, but I got a special treat with them today because you're the guy behind the guys funding their deals that we talk about. So you probably see way more deals than any of us ever see just because of what you do.
Yeah. We're right now, Zach, getting about 2,000 funding requests a week right now. 2,000 a week is what we're getting.
So you're not seeing anything slowing down on your side?
No, the market is on fire. It's crazy hot. And there's a lot of amazing opportunities out there.
Oh,
so
I agree, man. I'm 100% on the same page with you on that, Lee. I think there's opportunity now, and there is going to be even more opportunity coming. And so I tell people all the time, one of the core things you've got to have in place in this business for any opportunity is you got to have funding to be able to support you through your real estate journey. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on here, I know we have limited time, Lee, and so I want to just put this out there. I appreciate you giving me the ability to have you come back and do an entire hour training on what you're doing, how you're doing it, what you're seeing. And so everyone, I know you guys are going to want to watch this over and over. I wish I could keep him on here for an hour or 2 hours today, but I can't. But we're going to have a part 2 to this. And so Lee, I appreciate you doing that. And there'll be a link in the description so that you guys can register for part 2. But Lee, let's let everybody kind of get to know who you are. If you don't mind, and I got a bunch of questions for you, but I still want people to just kind of get an idea of who is Lee Arnold.
Well, that's a loaded question, Zach, but I'll do my best. Let's start with background. I started investing in real estate back in 1996 after I saw an infomercial on TV. Clearly infomercials still work. The first deal that I ever did was back in 96, and I used the pharmacist. I was a grocery store bag boy. I was making $3.90 an hour. And the first deal I ever funded was with a pharmacist at the grocery store that I worked at. And he put up the money, I did all the work, and we split the profits. So that's what kind of set me on my journey to go, hey, wait a minute. I think being the lender is the better way to go because everybody does all the work, and as the lender, you just kind of get to kick back and reap the benefits of that. So that was always kind of my goal, my push. But of course, I didn't have any money. So how are you a lender if you don't have any cash? Well, fortunately, we now know that anybody can be a lender, whether you have money or not. But at the time, I didn't. So I kind of focused on real estate investing from 96 till about 2003, where I had amassed enough cash, enough capital, enough credit lines that I went full-time into the private money lending business, which was on fire through 2008.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in 2008, I had a large portfolio of real estate that I had leveraged to create the liquidity that I was then lending to my private investors. But when the market tanked, as we all know what it did, they, of course, stopped paying their private money lenders. So now if my lenders aren't paying me, then I can't pay the banks that I had gotten capital lines from either. So it was a major domino effect It was painful, but I learned a lot from it. Spent about 18 months just negotiating with creditors and lenders and working through all of that. And thank the Lord, did not have to file bankruptcy just because we kept those lines of communication open, even to the point that many of those lenders are now lending through and with us again. So that's kind of the feather in my cap, I think, just to manage chaos. A mentor of mine said years ago, he said, Lee, don't ever waste a good crisis.
Right. You learn from them.
Yeah, you learn from it. And through that crisis, I realized that I didn't want to be tied to institutional lenders like I was then. So when we started rebuilding the company back in 2009, I said, we are going to build this on the backs of private individuals, private lenders, the mom and pop that own the candy store down the street. They've got a couple $100,000 sitting in the bank that they need to deploy it and get it out. So in 2010, we started Secured Investment Corp, which is what we have today. I am the CEO of that company. We also started Cogo Capital, which is a nationwide private money lending company. In 2012, we opened our first private equity fund. In 2014, we opened our second private equity fund. And last September, we opened our third private equity fund, which is a $50 million Reg A fund, which was really important to me because it's a non-accredited investor fund. So anybody that's got $1,000, whether you're accredited or not, can participate in that fund. And the reason it was important for me to do that is I wanted everybody to be able to participate in passive investment loans secured by real property, whether they had hundreds of thousands of dollars to lend or not. So $1,000 investment, people are in the game. So we now have hundreds of lenders, pushing thousands of lenders. That is where we go to get our capital that we lend out nationwide.
I love what you said there. Give people the ability to have passive investing, because we have this mindset that, oh, if I own rental properties, I'm a passive investor.
There's nothing passive about rental property.
No, we're not. We're still managing the managers. You know what I mean?
Exactly right. Yep.
But when you move into the private lending world, it does become therefore passive, especially if you're not the one lending it out and managing it, but you're going through a company like yours where that's hands off.
Right.
You guys are handling all the management aspects of it, and the legal and the documents and the tracking and the collections and all of that stuff. They're really being passive in that world.
Well, and the thing that sets us apart, and I think is really important for your audience to know right at the top of this, is that we do not lend money to owner occupants. So we don't lend to the person that's buying the dream home down the street on the lake or the river or the canal. We are lending only to real estate investors. So we look at experience, we look at volume of deals, we look at cash reserves. We do all of the underwriting internally. We fund everything internally. So we're not brokering money from other people. We literally are writing the checks right out of our office. So all the underwriting is done internally, the checks are funded internally, and we manage all the servicing internally. So we do a lot of rehab and construction loans where we are managing the operator. And so for us,
draws and
oh yeah, we're managing all of that internally.
Let's talk about that. So basically what I'm hearing you say is you've been in the private lending funding world for 17 plus years, roughly?
Correct. Yes.
Oh, that I've been in it 17 years, man. See, how long have me and you known each other, Lee?
I think we met
10 years.
We met back in 2005 or 6, didn't we?
Wow, that was right. That was right before the crash happened.
Yeah, because I think you and I met at a Ron LeGrand event or something.
Yeah.
You were speaking, I was speaking.
Yes. Wow, that was a long time.
It's been a long time, Zach.
Oh, man. Golly. Am I getting any more wrinkles here? Oh, man. No wonder I knew I liked you for some reason. So let's talk about this. 17 years you've been in this game, man. You've seen a lot of changes. And you've weathered the storm, you've rode it up, you wrote it down, and and now we here are again, with all kinds of different market positions, and the reality is that real estate never stops. Funding never stops. Yeah, funding might change in its criteria, or it might change in like its loan to value rates or things like that, but it never stops. And I think that's important for people to understand. And you're living proof of that for the last 17 years. So let's talk about this then real quick. So you being on the backside, And guys, I know you want to hear more about what Lee does. I got a link in the description. Check it out. We got a lot more questions to go. What on your side of the table, on the funder side of the table, what are you seeing coming across? Like what type of deal flow is coming through you? And I'm sure you have buckets, but if we looked at a sliding scale, is it more rental type properties? Is it more fix and flip? Is it more commercial reposition? What are you seeing over on your side?
Well, unfortunately, Zach, and I know this is probably not the nature of the answer you're looking for, but unfortunately what we're seeing predominantly is a whole bunch of the wrong types of deals. And the reason I say that is there are certain asset classes that investors should be avoiding right now. And because it is priced at bottom basement prices, they think that they're getting a good deal. But you and I both know the old adage, in real estate, you make money when you buy, you realize your investment when you sell, which means to profit, there must be a sale, there must be an exit. So a lot of people are flocking to multifamily commercial, but with the federal government changing all these laws to where now you don't have to pay your rent, and I don't think that that's going to be lifted. I just saw this morning, I do most of my business in Washington State. My office is located in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. But there was an article in the Journal of Business just today in the state of Washington that they have proposed a law in the legislature to eliminate the ability to evict between the months of September through March.
Yeah. Oh.
So as a lender, I'm sitting here going, well, that's the last asset class I'm going to lend on, because any tenant that knows how to read, and many people that don't have jobs, they spend all day at the library cruising the internet, and they're seeing the same articles we're seeing that say, hey, I can live in my house for 6 months and they can't evict me. The state of Illinois has proposed similar legislation, and many of your northern cold climate states have proposed this. And so as a lender, we are freaking out about financing anything that's buy and hold.
My lenders are too, man.
And where we used to be able to use 75% of the rental income to offset the DTI to the borrower, the debt to income to the borrower, now I believe we're going to see an adjustment in the industry across all channels where only 40 to 50% of the rental income is going to be used to offset DTI. And what that's going to do is it's going to devalue multifamily residential real estate, because you can no longer depend on the rental income. Yeah. And so that's the wrong asset class. Furthermore,
hold on. Let me just plug this into that one piece right there. I was on the phone, or I was doing a live show with someone the other day that's heavy in the commercial space, and he said it right along the lines with you. It's going to get more challenging. Lenders are getting harder to deal with. Sellers are going to have two options: drop their price or do seller carrybacks until lending loosens up. But He was even saying that a lot of the lenders out there are making investors that are buying these units to carry 1 year's worth of reserves. Like, do you know what that does to your cash on cash return? Now I got to put 30% down. I can only account for 50% of my rental income, and I got to put 1 year's worth of reserves.
Yep. Like,
who wants to play in that world?
Yeah. And what I believe that we'll see over time, Zach, is where those reserves, much like the cleaning deposit or the first and last month's payment with security deposit, I believe those security deposits that currently transfer at the sale, I believe that some of those rental deposits, that 30% will also transfer as part of the sale, simply to make it simpler for the seller to sell. And that's going to be the big issue, is how does a seller sell in a world of no financing? And you're right on. It's going to be seller financing. So while seller financing is a great strategy, it often attracts people that don't have any money.
Yes.
Right? The whole no money down thing. We all know the gurus of old. No money down, no money down, no money down. And Zach, you and I were both pretty young when we got into this business. I was 18 when I started investing in real estate, and I was very attracted to no money down because I didn't have any money. So I was drawn to the wrong types of properties where the seller was willing to carry financing because it was in an area or a market that banks wouldn't lend.
Or no one wanted it.
And, that should have been like the red flag. Hey, how come nobody's buying this thing? One of my mentors told me years ago, he said, Lee, before you buy any piece of real estate, you should always ask yourself this question: why am I so lucky? right? Wow, I look at my fortune. This is incredible. Well, it's because you got to carry a shotgun to collect your rents. That's why you're so lucky. So buying assets in areas that people want to live, that people are gainfully employed, that even in the midst of a law that says you cannot evict from September to March, those people are still good, responsible tenants that will pay. Now, the flip side of this, I believe that as a nation, we push more towards socialism, and I won't get political on you here, but I do believe that there will be government programs, there will be government bonds and all kinds of things to offset the no evictions within September to March policy so that landlords can go get some reprieve. We saw the PPP, the payroll protection programs that the government brought out, a while ago. Those types of programs have to come about, or it's going to completely kill the value of multifamily residential real estate.
Yeah, I agree.
And people are going to stop buying it. That's going to bring the values down. And it's
so let's save some of that for the part 2 on what you guys are doing for a solution on that. And let's lean over to the other side of the asset. So we understand those kind of are a little bit weary, but what else are you seeing people on the stuff that you're saying, look, these are what we're seeing that we like, that we're funding because we can get behind it. What are you seeing on that side?
The best deals that you as an investor should be buying right now, the types of deals that funding is clamoring to get itself into, because money is attracted to opportunity. So as a real estate investor, we should always be seeking assets that lenders want to throw money at us. And the asset class that lenders love right now is single family, stick-built, freestanding property. We saw an interesting phenomenon last month where we saw a 120% increase in people under the age of 30 buying real estate. And it's happening for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is in the midst of a worldwide global shutdown lock-in, people are realizing that communal living is not all it's cracked up to be. Right. These millennials are realizing that sleeping on people's couch in the midst of a pandemic is not where you want to be.
Or being stuck in the house with their parents. Exactly
right. So these millennials now, who up until this point have been very anti getting roots, settling down, they want to be footloose and fancy free. I would equate them very much to the old hippie generation of late 60s, early 70s. They didn't want to put down roots. They just wanted, free love, peace, go wherever I want, whenever I want, hitchhike here to there, sleep on people's couches, Airbnb it. But that mentality is shifting amongst the millennial generation. And that's why we're seeing such a massive shortage in affordable housing. So anything affordable housing is hot.
And so let's be clear with people. So when you say affordable housing, do you refer to, like, in every market, whatever the average home sales price is, it's that number and below, or is there a window of variance that you refer that to?
We use the FHA cap. Okay. And so even on our website, Zach, when you go there, you can go in and just put in your state and your county, and it'll tell you what the FHA cap is for that market.
Gotcha.
So if you just look at the single family cap, when you send a loan submission to us and you're telling us, the as-is value is X, your purchase price is Y, and the after repaired value is Z, if the after repaired value exceeds that FHA cap, we're not interested. Because 80% of the buying population is purchasing under the FHA cap. So when you bring us flips that exceed the cap, you're now playing in a land that only 20% of the known world can afford to buy. And
great
it's a recessionary downturn. It's the middle management. It's the $50,000 to $100,000 people that get whacked first, and they're the ones that are buying those $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 homes. So anything under 321 is sweet.
So your side of the operation, the funding side of the operation, you're saying, hey, look, we want to fund, but we want to fund safe and attractive in assets. And that is the single family, detached, first-time home buyer type property. And that's really the driving force behind what you're saying. Hey, we get we get those, they fund easier than something outside of that. What about on the rental side? Let's say it's not a big apartment. Let's say it's just a house in a B- type neighborhood, good school zones. You got an investor who's looking at it. Are you guys doing those long-term type investments, or are you doing like transitional or bridge 6 months to give them time to stabilize and finance out? How do you guys work with investors on those?
We are right now underwriting a 24-month product with a 24-month extension. So it's up to a 4-year product. It's an interest-only product, so it's not amortized over a 20 or 30 year. It's just straight interest. But I will tell you, Zach, that qualifying for that product is very challenging for the newbie investor that doesn't have, strong financial statement, a low credit score, and very little cash reserves in the bank, because we are having to underwrite to the cash flow that you anticipate coming from that project. And in a lot of markets today, the house that you described in that B- neighborhood is still priced at a number that it won't cash flow when you attach 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% money to it. Mm-hmm. So getting those assets to cash flow over that period of time is going to require a significant amount of money down from the borrower, or for the really effective negotiator, if they can get the seller to carry back a 20, 30, 40% chunk in a subordinate second at 0% interest with no payments for 48 months, that's something we can underwrite pretty easily.
Gotcha.
But the best advice I can give anybody, and this is not actually even for me, this came from George Ross. If you remember Donald Trump's real estate attorney?
Yeah.
So I was having lunch with him. It was at a Ron LeGrand event back in 2005. It maybe is the one we met at in Myrtle Beach. You were probably there. But we broke for lunch, and George Ross was the keynote. So I go through the buffet line, I get my plate, and I sit down next to George Ross. And, we're exchanging pleasantries, and he's saying, what do you do? And what do you do? And I said to him, we teach people how to invest in real estate, and then we give them money to buy real estate. And he goes, real estate investing. He says, I know more people that have lost millions of dollars investing in real estate than people that have made $1 million in real estate. And I'm thinking, okay, this is Donald Trump's attorney, the guy that co-wrote The Art of the Deal. And he's saying real estate's a sham and most people lose their rears in it. So I had to buy it. I said, okay, George, if what you're saying is true, I said, what's the fatal flaw? Why is what you're saying is true? He said, because they buy rental property too early. He said they buy rental property when they have no cash reserves. He said you should not buy rental property until you need the tax benefits. You need the write-offs. He said until that point, you should be simply wholesaling and flipping to amass cash reserves so that when something fundamentally goes wrong in rental property, which it does and will, that you have the cash to weather that storm.
That's great advice,
internally as a company, we adopted the philosophy of until you have $250,000 in cash in the bank, you should not be pursuing rental property as a strategy. Yeah. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, especially now when lenders are being so discerning about who they're going to lend cash flow acquisition funding to and for.
Yeah, it's a different world right now. So that's great information. So let me ask you 2 very important questions that I ask everybody that comes on the Coffee with Closers show. Because I believe that we learn a lot through things that are done wrong, and I believe that we learn through what people do right. So I lost your camera, Lee.
Oh, there we are. Am I back? Okay, sorry about that.
So I want to talk to you on the backside, because obviously it's not a deal specific, but what do you see? 2 questions. What do you see people do wrong when they're submitting an opportunity to you guys for funding? What are some of 2 or 3 of we see this all the time and it is wrong? So
the biggest mistake we see as a lender is people contacting us to become pre-approved or to get pre-qualified. When you go to a lender to get pre-approved, everything about the pre-approval is tied to you as an individual. Your income, your asset level, your job, your longevity, your experience, because we don't have anything else to go on. Your credit score. We don't have anything else to go on. So when you call us and say, hey, I'd like to get pre-qualified to buy real estate, it's like, okay, well, we're going to do a full credit report. We're going to completely underwrite you. And you're probably going to qualify for about 10% of what you could qualify for for if you did it the right way. And the right way is just go out and find really amazing deals, because money and funding is attracted to opportunity. And if you'll come to us with an opportunity under contract,
right.
we can fund it. And that's the other thing, is that people call my office and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this property over here. My brother's an agent, and he said there's this REO I could get. And it's like, well, go get it. Go put it under contract. Then come and see me.
It's almost like this, because we've shared business in the past with people that I've said, look, you got to go to talk to these guys; they'll fund your deals. And I know it's one thing that I always tell them up front, and I'm sure you get this, is I say, look, they're not coaches, like they're funders. Like, you need to go to them with a deal, not going to them asking them how to find that deal. Now, can they coach you? Yes, but that's not this phone number I'm giving you. This is to go get funding, right? And I'm sure your funders get those calls like, look, if you want to know how to coach to get a deal, let me send you to another department,
Right.
We need to see your deal so we can tell you if we'll fund it. Right. And I know that probably happens because, just in general, even when I sit down and about once a month, I meet with all the local banks, and they say the same thing. And that's why, and they send them to my RIA because of that. They're like, Zack, they come in here wanting us to tell them whether or not they got a deal or how to get a good deal or where they should be doing it. And we're like, that's not our job. Our job is to fund deals. And so, and I love the relationship I have with these banks, because they say, look, you need to go over to the Madison County RIA. You need to go see Zack over there to learn how to do this. So I'm sure that happens, but you guys are a little bit different. You're not just a funding company. You also have a servicing branch where you can help people who want more education, help people who want to learn, help people who want to build a business from this. And so you're kind of like a full operation over there.
Yeah. Well, and as you know, Zack, we do have we have a whole education side of our business where we teach people the right way to invest. And to give you a little insight into our internal operations, when you call my office and ask to be pre-qualified, my people are trained to say, do you have a deal and is it under contract? If the answer to either of those questions is no, you are transferred to my sales department, where they're going to sell you into one of our educational programs, because clearly you need education. Because the amateur seeks funding before they seek the deal. The professional seeks the deal before they seek the funding. Because if they know how to determine what is a good deal and what isn't, it's not a question of if I get the money, it's from who I get the money, right? I don't go into a real estate transaction hoping I'm going to get funding. I go into a deal knowing I'm going to get funding, and the question is, who's going to have the opportunity to provide the loan to me? So it's really flipping the script, because we are trained from elementary school that banks hold all the cards. Banks are the ones in power. And it's completely the opposite, because if banks aren't lending, they don't make any money. So it's the people that are the competent operators that are bringing quality deals to the table that banks can get involved in, that private lenders can get involved in. That's what we're looking for.
And you guys are
our audience, Zack, I would encourage them all to change their mentality from, gee, I hope I get lending, I hope somebody gives me money, to I wonder who I'm going to allow to write me a big fat check so I can buy this asset.
I like that.
Completely change.
And when you have the right deal, you can stand behind that mindset. You know what I mean? So let me ask you this, because you bring this up a couple of times. We've got banks, and then we got private lending companies. There's a big difference in the two. And you guys aren't really a traditional brick and mortar bank. You're more of a private funding type company. So when we say that, and I know we'll probably dig into a lot more of this on part 2, but just to kind of help people understand, you're not going through all the same processes that a local bank makes someone go through. Are yours similar, or are they way different? Or is it, look, we don't go 3 years back on you and we don't do all this? Or how does that kind of separate the two? And I know you're going to talk more about this on part 2, but just to let people know a little bit of the difference before we dig deep into it.
Well, and before I jump into that, Zack, I want to add a third lending leg to that group, because you have institutional banks, and then you have institutional private money, which is money that's drawn from Wall Street. So The Wall Street, so if I go to Wall Street and I get a wholesale line for, let's say, $100 million, they will only allow me to fund deals that fit in this pre-approved qualified box, which is tied to credit score, reserves, income statement, experience, balance sheet, P&Ls, all of that. So that is your institutional private lender. And the reason that that distinction is important is for your clients, when they're going around and looking, if you just Google private money, you're going to get, the top 20 companies on the planet, and most of them are institutional backed. So when you go there, you're going to experience a full underwrite, very similar as you would if you went to Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or even your local credit union, because they have to make sure that you and your deal fit in a box. Then you have the third leg, which is where I fit in. And the third leg is money that's drawn from private individuals, from self-directed IRA accounts, from savings accounts, from 401k accounts. All of my money comes from private enterprise, private individuals, no relationships with Wall Street banks or anybody else, which means we have the ultimate say, not anyone else. So if you bring me a deal and your credit is terrible and you don't have the capital reserves, you got nothing, but you have found a really good deal, I'm probably going to lend you the money. And here's an example. I was in a loan committee meeting just yesterday, and we have a client that has brought us his second deal. The ARV on this deal is 245, which falls well under the FHA cap in his market, and he's picking it up for $83,000. Needs about 60 grand in rehab, so he's going to be 143 all in with a 245 ARV. I mean, he's got $90,000 to $100,000 locked up in profit on this thing, but he doesn't have the cash reserves. Now, if you went to lender A or lender B, you're immediately going to be kicked out, denied, because they couldn't check that particular box. I'm more interested in the return of my investment than the return on my investment. So as a lender, I want to know, how are you going to give me my money back? What's your exit strategy? How are you going to execute this thing to get in and get out, put profit in your pocket, and give me my principal back? That's what I'm looking for. Now, because we had previously done a deal with this particular borrower, he had proven himself to be worthy of funding. So in lieu of the needed reserves, in lieu of some of the other boxes that should have been checked, we still funded the loan. And that's the power of that third leg, which is the non-institutional private money.
Love that explanation. So look, man, where do you see your company and your funding process? Where do you see it over the next 12 months? I mean, I know that's like give you a crystal ball, right? But it's like, what's the magical ball? But I mean, Lee, you're super smart. You're super plugged into the funding world. I mean, you're obviously you're predicting this yourself, right? You have to for your company and your brand. But I mean, what do you see, man? I mean, talk to us. Like, where do you think things are going?
Well, I started looking, so in lieu of, unemployment and pandemics and staying home and all of that stuff that took place, in lieu of all of that, we changed our, I won't say our lending box, but our desirable loan box about 18 months ago, because I saw what was happening in the multifamily space. With prices going up so high, the price people were paying for these. You remember the old rule of 1%, Zack?
Oh, I know.
Right? So if your rents are $2,000 a month, the property's worth $200,000. That's the value. But now we're seeing rents at $2,000 a month and sales prices at $350,000 and $400,000. So stuff, it doesn't pencil. Cash flow's not there. So we as a company pivoted about 18 months ago before any of these things to say, this is what we want to lend money on. And it is the FHA cap, single family, less than a half of an acre, less than 2,800 square feet, less than 5 bedrooms, 3 baths. That's what we want to lend on, because there's an old joke out there, Zack, and I'll use you. What do you call a stockbroker in a recessionary downturn?
I have no idea.
Waiter, right? Because they got to go get a job doing something else. What do you call a private money lender in a recessionary downturn?
A holder?
Landlord.
Okay.
Yeah. So as a company, we said, you know what, we need to do something to hedge our risk here. So we want to lend money on existing habitable assets that in the event that the borrower defaults or the market fundamentally shifts, that we can rent those properties out and just have a portfolio of rentals all over the nation in the event that occurs. And so that's what we did. So about 90% of my portfolio nationwide fits in that box that I just gave you.
Love it. Love it. So you're already pivoting and shifting, and you've already been there. So that's why I knew you probably had, man. Guys, so there you've heard it. Lots of great information. There's going to be a part 2. Like I said, go to the link in the description, click on that, register for that part 2, because it's going to be longer. We want to make sure we do it in a platform that we can make sure that we don't get any bugs or interferences. And so you'll need to register to come to that. But Lee, before we run out and ask you a bunch of hot fire questions, give us 3 or 4 bullet points additional to what we're going to be talking about on that training that we're going to be doing.
I'm going to cover how to get access to capital for all of your deals, regardless of what type. So even though we've given them a pretty good box, Zack, of where I think they should focus in on, for those of you that desire to go into other avenues like the multifamily space or the commercial sector or even raw land development, there is ample money available for those types of opportunities. You just have to know where to look. Those honey holes are a little bit more hidden now than they used to be. So you got to know where to look, and you got to know how to package the deal to make it immediately attractive. It can't look like everything else coming in there. So we're going to cover that. I'm going to cover how people can get paid twice on their deals. There is an opportunity for a lot of people to become private money brokers, where right there in your own market, you could be bringing deals to us as a company. And when we fund those deals, we would happily pay a fee to the broker that brings us that borrower. And the cool thing is, Zack, is that borrower could actually be buying one of your houses. So you can get the hotel fee, you can get the broker fee, but ultimately you can get these houses moved a lot more.
So for an example, if a wholesaler finds a deal and says, "Hey, John, I got a deal. You need to buy this deal from me. I want 10 grand. Oh, you need funding. Well, hey, I'm also part of this organization. I can get you funding." And they get paid on it too.
Correct.
Oh, I love that.
So I'm going to cover that in a little bit greater detail. And then thirdly, Zack, we're going to cover how to tighten up that box a little bit so that you can move more quickly. I think that right now, in lieu of these big rips, these home runs that everybody, talks about, and you all seen the webinar with the guy that's still showing a slide from 1993 where he made 100 grand. I would be focusing on base hits where you're making those quick $5,000 and $10,000 pops. Get in, get out. Now is not the time to be buying and holding anything, in my opinion. So I'm going to be talking more about how to manipulate the market to your advantage.
Yeah. And will you go more in depth in part 2 about like what it looks like with your company funding people, like what that time frame looks like, how the processes are, kind of where you guys are on terms and rates and things like that?
Absolutely. And that's my reason for being here. And I appreciate the opportunity, Zack, because we are in a massive capital raise right now. We're raising millions of dollars. And, everybody talks about raising money like, ooh, they've got millions of dollars. Raising money is only the first challenge. As a private money lender, I got to raise it, but then I got to deploy it. And right now, we have people flocking to us out of simply insecurity about the market. Where is it going? People cashing in 401ks, stock portfolios, and bringing it to us and saying, hey, go manage this for me, lend it out. So we now more than ever are looking for competent operators with quality deals because we want to fund.
That's funny you say that, because I say this all the time to people when they're coming to me about going out and raising money. I'm like, look, raising the money will be the easy part once you know how to do it. I said, what you got to worry about is once you raise it, now you got to deploy it, right? You got to go buy that, get the houses, right?
Right.
And they don't think about that. You know what I mean? Because look, any good investor like yourself who's raising money, like if I don't deploy this, like it's just stagnant money sitting there. And so there's nothing made. So that's great, man. I appreciate that. So I'm excited about this, guys. I hope you guys are too. This is like the real deal, getting on a training call, talking to somebody that's really deploying money, understands the backside, understands what's working, what's not working. If you know anybody that is in this space, I think you should copy this link and share it with them. Get it out there so that they can hear exactly what Lee's talking about. Look, they might be brand new trying to come in. They might be in for a while and getting slapped by the banks and trying to figure out, what am I going to do now? Any of those, they need to be on this train. They need to be hearing what Lee has to say, because I promise you, he's going to open some doors that you probably didn't even know existed, much less knew you had the opportunity to do it. And so it's a powerful training that we're going to do. I'll try not to talk so much on that one. So, all right, Lee, I'm going to let you get out of here. I got some hot fire questions for you. We end every Coffee with Closure show the same way. So are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. What's your best place to vacation at?
Maui.
Oh, love it. What was your first automobile?
1987 Honda Accord Fastback.
You know what's so funny? Like, I couldn't tell you what my third or my fourth automobile was, but I can always do this. I can tell you exactly what my first one was, too.
What was your first car, Zack?
1972 Gremlin. American Motors.
That is a classic right there. I learned to drive because I grew up on a farm. I learned to drive in a 1973 Chevy Love. You remember those?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I had to sit on a football because I couldn't see over the steering wheel, and it was a stick shift because I'd have to go pick up hay all summer long while my dad was at work. So yeah.
Mine was a 3-speed. I didn't know how to drive a stick shift. The guy that sold it to me got in trouble. His dad made him sell the car. He said, Zack, I'll sell it to you for $200. Just sell it back to me one day. I said, okay. I took off from his house all the way down the road, man. And it was neon green. All right. What's your favorite season or holiday, Lee?
I love the fall. I love the changing leaves. I love the colors. I love the crisp cold air. You know, I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest, so we get 4 seasons. And you know, when late September, October hits, pumpkin season, fall festivals, apple cider. I love it.
With you. I'm in the South, so we have them too. So, all right, what's your favorite, or not even favorite, but what's a great podcast you listened to lately besides yours or mine?
You know, I don't listen to a lot of business-related podcasts, Zack. If you were to get in my truck right now, I am listening to Chuck Smith, the founder of Calvary Chapel Churches, because I've been a Calvary Chapel guy for 20 years. My wife and I have a nonprofit ministry called He's the Solution Ministries. So I'm always listening to sermons and just trying to better understand the Bible. So I don't actually listen to a lot of business podcasts.
Well, and there's some really great Christian podcasts out there as well. I mean, so, you know, it stretches all, you know, I guess you could say interest. I'm a big, you know, part of my church as well, and I listen to a lot of Christian stuff. So, all right. So talk to me about food. What, if you had your choice, what would be your favorite food you would eat and not feel bad about?
You know, the other day we were out in the yard because I live on acreage. So we were out, you know, doing the spring cleaning thing. And I'm thinking, man, I want a steak. My grandfather was a cattle rancher, so I grew up on red meat. I'm like, I want a steak. But of course, you know, all the restaurants were closed, so we couldn't go get a steak. So we went to the grocery store. We barbecued right there in the front yard. It was amazing. But steak. Love a good steak.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Are you an early riser?
No, I hate mornings.
Do you? What time does Lee get up?
I'm usually, when the kids are in school, I'm usually up at 6 because I got to take them and be at school by 7.
That's early, Lee.
Well, that's when the kids are in school. When the kids aren't in school, I'm usually up around 7:30.
Okay.
Zack, my first non-farm job was a grocery store, and I worked from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight. So. And I did that for 5 years, and that just kind of became my thing. And then from there, I went into the seminar business where we were, you know, putting on seminars until 9 o'clock at night. So I don't know, just part of me, it's always been a late night guy. And so usually I get started to the office about 9 o'clock.
Love it. All right. What's your favorite book or the best book you've read lately?
My favorite book is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. My second favorite book is Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. And then my third favorite book is Life is a Series of Presentations by Tony Jerry.
Oh, I think I like that one. I need to remember that one. All right, man. Favorite movie? Favorite movie of all times?
Can I tell a story? Do we have time?
Sure.
Okay. So it's 2004. My wife and I have been married now for 2 years. We got married in 2002. And she has gone away on a women's retreat at church. And so she calls me. I'm home alone. We don't have kids yet at this time. And she calls me from this women's retreat and she says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'd really rather not say." You don't tell that to your wife when she's away and you're home alone. So I said, "I'd rather not say." She says, "No, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just watching a movie." And she's like, "What movie are you watching?" And so again, I said, "I'd really rather not say." So in her mind, okay, you're home alone, you're watching a movie and you don't want to tell me, it must be bad.
It must be bad.
So she starts getting mad. I could hear her on the phone. She's getting more and more angry. The temperature levels are rising. And finally I said, "Look, I don't want to tell you because I'm embarrassed by it, because I'm home alone watching The Sound of Music."
I wouldn't have told her neither.
And that's a true story, man. And I don't know what it is. I still love that movie. It's a great movie.
That's so funny, man. You know what? I love ending on that question because everybody has a different favorite movie I've talked to. And there's always something behind it. You know what I mean? And so it's a great question. Lee, man, I appreciate you being on and being so transparent about what you guys are doing and how you're helping people and what you're seeing in the market. I'm really excited about our part 2. Guys, click that link in the registration or in the description and get registered for our part 2 of this, where Lee will have more time to really unfold all those things that he's talking about on how you can really be taking advantage of this opportunity that we're in, as long as you have the right understanding of where the money's coming from, how to get that money, and how, more than anything, even if you're not interested in buying and selling, you can still be a wholesaler and still plug people into money and get paid for that. Like, that is a very, very great thing to learn. So I appreciate that, Lee. So thank you again for being here on my Coffee with Closers show. And guys, be on part 2. I'm telling you, it's going to be good. Lee, any parting words?
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes, Zach: "Don't leave your success in the hands of others."
Ooh,
I mean by that is, if you don't go watch part 2, you're going to continue to attempt to invest in real estate, waiting on somebody else to find you money. And the best thing you can do for your career as a real estate investor is understand how the finance side of this business works and learn how to effectively tap into those private money sources. Because if you don't learn that, you are always going to be coming to people like me to get your deals funded. And it's going to cost you significantly more than it needs to if you simply understand how to find, source, and season your own capital opportunities. So please, I implore you, go to our next session where I'm going to cover a lot of this stuff, and don't leave your success in the hands of others. But other than that, thanks for having me here, Zach.
That's a great one, man. Hey, guys, right here, you heard it live right here with the Zack Attack and the Coffee with Closers show. Remember, click that subscribe button, smash that bell. Every time we put out a new Coffee with Closers show with a real investor doing real deals in a real market, you'll get notified of it and you can enjoy it for yourself. I'll see you guys on the next one.